the other dimension, which I believe is not too widely known, and that is the love, the friendship, the sharing and the caring which existed in the camps, which gave one hope for the ultimate goodness of humanity. And since those who perished, they left no children behind, you are the spiritual heirs, and you must know of the greatness of this legacy which was left to you. It's almost impossible to talk, in numbers. 6 million, 5 million, 100 people, 10 people. I believe it's only the identification with one, and we can then multiply the numbers in our hearts. Whenever I look at the screens and see the mothers clutching the infants, now, today, see the hunger, the whips, I feel that they could tell the story, each and every one of them. I'm not unique. I have just been blessed with freedom and, in a way, the gift of gab, if I may say so. But, I remember, I always wanted to lose my accent, which is very obvious. And my husband once said to me, if you wouldn't talk so much and if you would listen, you would lose your accent. Well, it never happened. So anyway, this is my story. But speaking about the humanity, I always, particularly when I am in an institution where there are young people, and I know there are a number of young people here, and I'm telling the story particularly to you. I remember one. Her name was Ilse. She was a childhood friend of mine, or rather I should say her mother and my mother were close friends. And as mothers often do, meaning well, they always brought us together and wanted us to be friends. In all honesty, I never liked her. For a very simple reason. My mother always told me what a well-behaved and superbly mannered little girl she was, how beautifully she played the piano, how I should try to be more like her, and predictably I never wanted to play with that paragon of all virtue, it seemed. But whenever we were together without our mothers, we always had a very nice time. Together we were sold into a slave labor camp called Bolkenheim. In the camps, we became to each other the only family we had. She left me many memories, and the memories of two incredible gifts. One was on a hot day when we walked to the factory. She found a single raspberry in the gutter. She carried that treasure in her pocket all day long to present it to me that night on a leaf which she plucked through the barbed wire. Can you conceive of a world in which one slightly bruised, dust-covered raspberry becomes your entire possession? And to give this treasure to a friend. Tragically, she never tasted another raspberry again. She died in my arms on a wet meadow in Czechoslovakia. She was 18 years old. We were on the death march then, let me explain. First years, we were in slave labor, which later became concentration camps. On January 29, 1945, as the Americans, the British and Russian forces were crushing Germany to our ultimate defeat, our orders were to be going to Oranienburg. Oranienburg was a murder camp near Berlin, such as Auschwitz was in Poland. Blessedly, Oranienburg fell into the hands of the Allies, and we started a march known in history books simply as the Death March. Bullets were too expensive and too much needed on the front, so other means had to be done in order to kill us. We started the march on the 29th of January. Hilda died on the 29th of April. In the last bitter hour of her young and fulfilled life, she gave me the greatest gift of them all, the gift of my own life. She revealed the depths of her humanity by saying she was angry at no one, and she hoped that no one was angry at her. And then she asked me that if her parents and her little sister Kitty survive, not to tell them how she died. She did not survive. And lastly, she asked me to go on for one more week. A week in those times was a very long time. A week later, exactly to the day, perhaps to the very hour of her death, we were liberated by American forces. The 120 remaining from the thousands were locked into an empty bicycle factory. And our captors not only locked us in, but attached a time bomb. I know it sounds like a cheap thriller. I remember that night and our prayers very well. Suddenly it started to rain. A torrential rain so common in the spring, a rain which resulted in mud, obviously preventing the bomb and hammer to connecting, and it never went off. At dawn, we heard the doors being thrust open. A good Czech people came running and calling, if anyone is there, get out. The war in Europe was over. What do you feel in such a moment? I recall no feeling at all. I don't know if I was too ill to distinguish a dream of 6 years from reality, or if God in its providential wisdom creates an emotional vacuum at such a time. One's being has to empty itself of every emotion to make room for an onrush of such incredible joy. And I experienced that as I stood in the doorway of that factory and saw on a close-by hill a strange-looking car, no longer green, thank God, and its hood not the despised swastika, but the white star of the American Army, brighter than every star I had ever seen in the universe. Two men in unfamiliar uniforms sat in that vehicle. One came running toward me. I looked at that man with awe and disbelief. But of course, I knew that I had to identify, as the Nazis made us do immediately, that we were Jewish. I looked at him and said with quite a bit of fear and trepidation, "We are Jewish, you know." For seemingly long time, he didn't answer me. And finally, his own voice betrayed his emotion. When he said, "So am I." The greatest moment of my life. I was liberated not only by an American, but by a fellow Jew. Before I recovered, he asked a strange question. He asked if he could see the other ladies, the form of her dress obviously unknown to us. I told him that most of the girls were inside, they were too ill to walk. He asked me to come with him. And by doing so, did something which at first I didn't understand. And when I understood it, I could not believe it. He simply held the door open for me and let me precede him. And in that incredible gesture, he restored me to humanity again. I'd like to give you a picture. I weighed 68 pounds. My hair was gray. I was going to be 21 the following day. I was in rags. I hadn't had a bath in 3 years. And here was this very handsome young American